Welcome, everybody, back to the Mattime Podcast. This is Zach, Brad, Brock, and Nick. We're going to be covering UFC 240 tonight, and along with some MMA news as well. Tonight's podcast is going to be a little shorter than normal. Please forgive us. At least Brock, Nick, and I just finished a savage workout section at Practical MMA, trying to strangle each other.
Brad put in a mean game of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. They weren't there to train with me Monday, so...
Fair enough. So tonight we're just going to cover Chris Cyborg and Felicia Spencer, and then we're going to go into Max Holloway and Frankie Edgar. And then we got some MMA news that we're going to cover as well. So first, Chris Cyborg, Felicia Spencer. Everybody and their mother knows who Chris Cyborg is, unless you've been living under a rock and paid no attention at all to MMA whatsoever. You should know who she is. She's a destroyer. Up until Amanda Nunes, Chris Cyborg was unstoppable. We all saw her just smash through every competition. And granted, as great as Amanda Nunes is, it still took 12 clean punches to put Cyborg down. Chris Spencer's good. She's young. She comes from Canada. She's a little bit smaller than Chris Cyborg. Chris is about 5'8", 5'9", give or take, and Felicia's about 5'6". She's 6-0. Cyborg is 20-2. Just experience alone. I think Chris Cyborg is going to come out like she normally does, ferocious, throwing bombs, and Felicia Spencer is really going to have to weather the storm.
Yeah, Felicia Spencer, she just came off of a submission win over Megan Anderson, and it was a big upset because I'm sure you guys know about the hype train that was around Megan Anderson.
Yeah, for sure.
After she lost to Holly Holm, people still wanted her to connect with the fans and be a solid contender, but Felicia Spencer, all credit to her, she rose to the occasion, and she took Megan's back, and it was one of those that looked like maybe she would shake off the top and it wouldn't lead to anything, but she stayed clamped on her and stayed consistent on the rear naked, and she won. So with rising to the occasion like this, now she has a bigger opportunity at hand in fighting the greatest women's featherweight champion of all time and one of the baddest women of all time.
Yeah.
So we're going to see how she fares.
If Amanda Nunes is one on the MMA women's ranking, then Chris Cyborg's probably two.
Yeah.
Easily.
Easy, too.
What I see being a big problem here for Felicia Spencer is just the gigantic gap in experience. Felicia Spencer is 7-0, and all credit to her for winning her first 7 professional fights. Cyborg has 3 times the amount of fights, more than that, than Felicia Spencer. And this is Cyborg's first non-title fight in 5 fights, something like that. The 3-round pace, Cyborg might be able to put even more of that pressure that she normally puts on people. We don't generally see Cyborg fights go the distance unless you're Holly Holm, but I don't see Felicia having what it takes to stick with Cyborg even through 3 rounds. Now, this is presuming that Cyborg is still Cyborg and she's not still reeling from that loss to Amanda Nunes.
That's what I wanted to ask, Brock. I want you to give your take on this. Where do you think Cyborg's head is, if you had to guess? Do you think she's going to be shooken from her loss to Amanda Nunes? I mean, if I had to give my take, it seems like she's taking it pretty well, but as far as the fight game, where do you think her head is?
So in my opinion, I feel like there's a possibility that she already has a foot out the door. I don't know if you followed her recently, but after her loss to Amanda, she has I think this is her last fight on the contract.
Yes.
Her current contract. Mm-hmm. I don't know if she's re-signed yet.
A lot of questions to be asked after this fight happens.
As of now, I'm assuming she hasn't signed yet. I haven't seen. So
yeah, she should be a free agent.
Right. I've seen her put a lot of interest in professional wrestling.
Yeah.
And obviously WWE wouldn't really work because of the issue, like her and Ronda, like that would never happen.
And the language barrier.
Right. They really don't, that just wouldn't happen. But there's another company that's starting on TNT in October, All Elite Wrestling, and she went to one of their pay-per-views, and she had like all the fans coming up to her and everything. Like, everybody was showing interest, and even the wrestlers were saying if she shows enough interest and she really puts the time in, that they will train her and she will move on, and maybe one day she'll get a spot on TV or whatever. But I feel like that might be like her next step, that like kind of like Ronda did. Like, she finally got beat, and then now she's going to move on. It seems like she's moving that way, at least.
I'll tell you what, though. I think this is probably a really good fight for her to come back on, though.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, if you look at, you know, Spencer's last fight, she didn't show a lot of head movement. She didn't keep that backhand up very high. And she looked a little lost on the feet.
Yeah.
And if she does not get her striking defense up, Cyborg is going to blast her.
I'm not trying to take anything away from Spencer's game, but I saw more of a deficiency in Megan Anderson's jiu-jitsu than I saw skill on Spencer's side. At the end of the day, she won the fight. That's the fight game. She was better than her. That's how it is. But if we had to use that as data for this fight, I mean, I'm just not very impressed with that. I'm not eager for her chances for this fight against Cyborg.
And Cyborg is a smasher on the feet. Everybody knows that. But she is also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt.
Yeah.
And
we've seen chicks desperate to take her down that just can't do it, you know?
She's so strong.
Mm-hmm. You can't do it, and I don't know if you want to do it.
Yeah, you're not just going to go out there and choke Chris Cyborg. Mm-hmm. That's going to be really, really difficult. You know, you have to have a really high-level set of skills, and potentially, you know, the only way I see her strangling Chris Cyborg is at the very end of the fight when maybe she's exhausted. But when it's early and she's got power, and I see this fight ending obviously with Chris Cyborg via knockout. Yeah. I mean, she's right now minus 700 favorite, which is completely appropriate. Spencer's a plus 450 dog. Even at 450, I don't like her chances. You know, unless you're wrapping this into a parlay or something like that, it's a good no bet. You know, 700 is kind of a lot to lay to win 100. And, you know, crazy things do happen in MMA, head kicks, and, you know, people run into flying knees, Ben Askren, you know, so anything can happen, obviously, but at the end of the day, Chris Cyborg is going to go out there and she's going to put work in and look to see her knock this girl out in the first round, maybe second. Yeah,
that's really the question for me is, does Spencer make it out of the first round? I don't see her amounting any offense in this fight. I predicted that Cyborg's going to get her out in the first round. I'll be very surprised if she makes it past that.
I agree. I am still curious, though. Has she shown interest in a rematch with Amanda? I'm not sure.
It seems to be like some he said, she said. She's finally starting to speak up a little bit. I think she was really being quiet after the fight was over with Amanda Nunes. She wasn't trying to take anything away from her, anything like that. The ultimate answer is yes, but it doesn't seem like she's ready to rush into it, which is probably a smart thing to do. Because she has to build some wins, get her confidence back, get her mojo back, and that's what it is. But I would never believe that she's scared of Amanda Nunes. I think she'd be ready if she was offered the rematch.
See, what I wonder is, does she want to put in the work to go into a completely separate profession, as in going into wrestling?
Right.
When she has the options to continue fighting, should she want to, in mixed martial arts, Muay Thai, and even grappling. And grappling 7 years ago, when she was grappling as a purple belt for IBJJF World Championships, and grappling now where she could get on EBI, Combat Jiu-Jitsu World, Polaris. There's any number of high-level, big-name promotions to make decent money grappling now, too. There's so many things to the skill set she's already been building that, not that she couldn't, or maybe she does want to go into wrestling, but the easier thing maybe, or the easier transition would be to just what we've seen other retired fighters do. All these grappling competitions.
Super fights and things
fights like that. Mm-hmm. Hopefully not bare knuckle, because she'll kill somebody. I feel bad for whoever they... Oh, actually, never mind. Change that. Rewind. What I want to see Cyborg do after this fight...
Paulie Malignaggi.
No, better than that. I want her to bare knuckle box Fallon Fox.
She's still fighting.
I think so.
Yeah.
Women? Still fighting women?
I think she's at the point of no return. You can't really go back.
Still fighting biological women?
Leslie Smith wasn't Leslie Smith that beat her?
No, Ashley Evans Smith.
Ashley Evans Smith, my
girl.
But
then she busted for steroids right after that fight.
Ashley Evans Smith did?
Yes.
Wow.
Whatever.
Maybe that's what it takes to beat a man.
She busted for steroids right after that fight that got her into the UFC. So that's the fight, I believe, that got her into the UFC.
Is that really cheating?
No, I mean, not really.
I don't think it is.
It's not really cheating.
Call me an asshole. I don't care. I don't think it's cheating.
Yeah.
You are an asshole, but
I do think it'd be cool if they do something with Chris Cyborg like they did with China back in the day in WWF, where she's beating the hell out of dudes. That's where she would fit in with
pro wrestling. Yeah, it would be easy to sell. She's just an intimidating bitch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And she legit kills people.
She's known well enough for that to be viable for her to do.
Right, like what they did with
I
Ronda.
Don't deny it, but
like with just throwing everybody around.
So moving on to the main event, and the reason why we're pretty much all going to be watching this card is this fight and this fight alone. And to be honest, I mean, I love Max Holloway, but I'm not super excited about this fight.
Yeah.
Frank Yeager is great, and he's a good dude, and he probably belongs in the UFC Hall of Fame.
Definitely.
But I think we've seen his best days.
I agree.
And Max Holloway, I think, is a real killer. And Frank Yeager is a little short and has a little too less of reach to be fighting a guy like Max Holloway, who's going to keep him on the outside and pick him apart. You're talking about the guy who picked apart Jose Aldo twice.
Against the guy who's lost to Jose Aldo twice, you know? I know MMA math doesn't usually work like that, but it's definitely a big factor.
You know, against a guy who is almost a better, newer version of Jose Aldo and Max Holloway. You know, if Frankie has trouble taking down Jose Aldo, you think he's going to be successful in taking down Max Holloway? Probably not.
He didn't have to take down Chad Mendes.
For sure. And that's his one knockout win in the last 17 fights.
Probably.
He's a decision king.
Yeah.
And you don't want to get into a 5-round kickboxing match with Max Holloway, who's got gas and fuel and energy for days.
Excellent
that kid doesn't get
takedown
tired.
defense.
Yeah.
Brian Ortega gave him everything he had and couldn't take him down. That's I don't see it happening. I mean, although Ortega's he's not a wrestler, you know what I mean? He could take people down whenever he feels like it, basically. When you get a guy like Max, who naturally can strike well, he's long, and you get these short wrestlers that just try to dive in on him, he can either keep his distance and not give him the opportunity to shoot in, or when they do shoot in, he just sprawls out and gets wide on him and flams them out. Yeah. Gets underhooks, climbs them back up, and there's nothing they can do about it. And that's what he does every single time.
And then you're going to just eat a jab over and over and over and jab 1-2,
like
jab 1-2.
Maybe he doesn't necessarily hit the hardest at 145, but the volume of strikes he hits you with it's just absurd.
It's an avalanche of punches on you.
You
after, I think it was in the first Jose Aldo fight, is Max came back to the corner and Joe Rogan and company were all in the commentator's booth sitting there watching him, and Max leaned against the cage and said, "The man is tired." Talking shit. I mean, he's got a crazy conditioning program over there in Hawaii.
Yeah, and the biggest thing, honestly, it just seems like his confidence is sky high. I know he's coming off the Dustin Poirier loss, but you know he has nothing to be ashamed of in that fight. Going against one of the only men to ever defeat him in a weight class he doesn't compete in. He's a champion in the weight class lower than that. He takes a big challenge, goes and gets a guy who's hungry in Dustin Poirier. I mean, besides that, he's been riding one of the craziest waves we've ever seen, beating the greatest featherweight of all time twice, beating a guy like Brian T. City Ortega in dominant fashion. It seems like as the fights go on, he's getting more and more dangerous because of his confidence. It's like the octagon is his home. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
You got to think that
he grew up there.
Well, he definitely did grow up in that cage. That's for sure. But you got to think that if Max comes back as the Max we've seen before, and there's no ill effects from that Dustin Poirier fight still lingering, that even Frankie, who's got cardio and movement and kickboxing and wrestling, it's gonna probably be just too much for even Frankie Edgar to handle. Now, Frankie has been through it, in and out, forwards and backwards, and then got back in line. Mm-hmm. He does not quit. There's zero quit.
He's never gone away.
No. So
toughness will not win you the championship.
No, toughness makes a beating more interesting.
It just makes for an interesting challenge for Holloway because Frankie's not going to go away.
No, he's not. But he might go away.
Yeah.
Because Max Holloway is lethal. Mm-hmm. And you have to be lethal to be the champ. If you look at all of the champions, they all put people away. And they put them away in scary fashion a lot of times. Not all the time, but Daniel Cormier, look at his record. I mean, he slept Stipe for that belt. John Jones has got a laundry list of guys who he's either strangled,
brutally,
submitted,
every
brutally.
Time.
Yeah, at times where you're just like, he's dominated guys. Where you think like, here's another contender. Here's Glover Teixeira. He hits hard. He's going to be able to do something. No, John rips through him. Frankie Edgar has never done that to anybody. He knocked out Chad Mendez, but this is the Chad that got knocked out by Conor and was in a war against Jose Aldo, and your chin goes away. And, he got clipped, and it happens. But Frankie's not known for doing that. It's one of the only times he's done that.
Well, that's the only, off the top of my head, one punch Frankie's got. But Frankie has 12 decision wins and 7 and 4 between his submissions. So that's 12 and 11.
Well, he's got 29 pro fights. 17 have been won by decision. Or 17 of them gone to decision, and he's won 12 of those.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then he's got
one knockout loss on his record.
Mm-hmm.
He's been slept one time.
I'm just saying Frankie is maybe older now, but he is, or at least was, the first example of the balanced mixed martial artist.
Mm-hmm. Sure, he's got good striking and wrestling.
He's got everything that you would want.
But he doesn't have the best body. You know what I mean? He's not long and light and...
No, he's probably a little bit too... This weight might be, again, still too big for him.
Yeah. Right. Would you argue he should be a 35-pounder?
I would argue that he should have been a 35-pounder maybe 5 years ago.
Right, I don't think
at
he can
37,
make it now.
I don't think it's a great plan.
That's another thing, is not only is Frankie competing against Max, who is a young, hungry killer still, he's fighting against Father Time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Zach, what I was saying to you earlier is, if we had both of these fighters in their prime, I'm still taking Max.
100%.
Because, obviously...
Like you said earlier, Max might be the greatest featherweight of all time.
Yeah.
They've been calling him that since the second Aldo win.
It's not crazy to say that.
I think that, a
10
prime
younger.
Holloway beats a prime Edgar because he hasn't evolved with the sport, honestly. I'm not saying he has a bad skill set. He has a great skill set, but he's very, not one-dimensional, but he's very predictable in what he does. He doesn't have any X factors, like Zach said. He doesn't have any dangerous threats. He doesn't throw head kicks. He doesn't have one-punch power. He goes in there.
Jab, double leg.
Jab, that's basically it. Jab, double leg. He'll mix it up pretty well where it becomes a mystery.
Throw a body kick here and there.
Yeah.
He's
can
got
box
good
well.
movement, good footwork. His boxing and everything is good.
But it doesn't matter how good your boxing is if you got a 5-inch less of reach and you can't even get in there.
It's like
The reach
he's going to be striking at different
is listed at
frequencies,
69 inches for Max Holloway and 68 for Frankie Edgar.
That's wrong.
I don't like that listing either.
I think the UFC is. I think that's wrong on the UFC's website.
That's not the UFC website. This is just the one I'm looking right here.
Okay.
Real quick as a Google result.
This doesn't sound right.
It does not sound right.
Because Max has some long arms.
He does. He's lanky.
Max is very lanky.
If I were to guess, actually, I'm not going to guess. I'm going to look right here on the UFC's website.
Not that the UFC website is the best for...
The UFC website has Max's reach listed at 42 and Frankie's at 37.
That's more accurate.
Yeah, I think that's much more accurate.
So
You weren't looking at leg reach, were you, Brad?
I'm looking at, it says reach, and it says 69
that
inches.
would probably be
I am
wrong,
actually
too.
looking at leg reach. I'm making a mistake, actually.
Yeah? They have leg reach on there? Okay.
They have leg reach on there, and that's what I'm reading.
We're all mixed up. It's all good.
Yep. But no, 69 and 68, he is correct.
So,
But that doesn't sound correct to me.
Now,
we'll see.
There is
But mark my words.
reach in inches, and then there is using your range.
Yeah.
And
Right.
Frankie is...
compact.
Yeah.
And Max is long.
He doesn't extend on a lot of stuff. He stays. He shoots from the chamber the entire time. You never see him lunging. You never see him throwing long kicks that establish a range. He likes to fight in a phone booth. That's like
He
what
wants
likes
to
do.
get in, and he wants to wrestle you.
And that's honestly how he wins the fight. It's the only way he beats Max Holloway is he's going to have to use his wrestling. I mean, we'll see how that goes.
He's got to pin Max down and beat him ground and
There's
pound.
no way he beats him on the feet. I'm sorry.
No.
I
Not unless Max makes a critical mistake,
Yeah.
which I don't see him doing.
He never does.
He doesn't. Granted, everybody can zig when they should have zagged. You run into something, but...
Right.
Not only that, but that's another thing, is Max can take a punch, too.
Oh, yeah.
Look at that Dustin fight. I mean, Dustin drops bombs.
Yeah, that's all he was doing the entire fight. It was just bombs.
Right. And Max took him.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Frank Yeager's got the power to put Max away with
He doesn't have Dustin Poirier power.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people are taking away that champ-like aura from
Because of that
Holloway
loss.
because of that loss.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But if anything, the way that fight went, we should be embracing him even more. Simply because
He took on a challenge.
that might be the worst time he could have ever fought Dustin Poirier. I mean, you would argue 2 years ago or a year ago he might have ragdolled Poirier, maybe. But, like, something clicked in Poirier's head in the last year.
2 years ago, I don't think Poirier had the cardio that he has now.
Yeah.
Definitely. No, he didn't. No, he has evolved on every level so much in the last year and a half. It's insane the way he's completely changed himself and completely for the better.
So right now we got Frank Yeager as a plus 300 dog, and Max Holloway coming in as a minus 400 favorite.
So I have a question for you
yeah.
guys. We all are in consensus here picking Holloway and Cyborg, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, I mean, with the clear favorites in the two main fights on this, it's how do you... I have a couple questions now that I've thought of, but how do you look into betting when you've got two big favorites at the top of the card where you'd have to lay so much just to make anything? Do you look at it as not worth it, or do you look at it as an easy way to build a little bit of money?
I mean, it's an easy way to build a little bit of money. Obviously, you don't want to bet the farm on anybody at any time. Bankroll management is critical when it comes to sports gambling. I would definitely put a little bit of money on, Max Holloway at 4-1. It's not terrible. Like I said, you could, in the biz they call it a bankroll builder. Like a lot of those Vegas handicappers who sell their stuff.
Lay 100 and clear 25 or something.
Basically,
like that?
yeah, you'd have to lay 100 to clear 25. What you can also do to try and edge out a little bit of extra money for yourself is you can take the chance on betting when and how the fight is going to end.
Yeah.
Like
obviously we have
Chris Cyborg knockout in the first round.
Yeah.
That's
going to get you.
That's a pretty good one.
That's going to get you. It's still going to be bad odds. I guarantee that's probably going to go off at like 3-1 or something like that.
So
how that fight's going to end.
Some of the big things that me and Zach do when we're met with stacked odds like this. The first thing I mentioned to Zach a couple days ago was parlaying Max Holloway and Chris Cyborg.
I like the sound of that.
And even then, though, you're still going to get some terrible odds.
Yeah, which I think when I did it, when I put in the parlay calculator, I came up with minus 220. Sounds good, because I think both of them are going to win.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, you're still at,
Still going to win too.
You're still at 2-1 odds over 2 fights.
Yeah.
You got to think about it that way, because both of those fights sound rock solid. But if in the long run, it bites you in the ass sometimes.
Oh yeah.
So.
And in a situation like this where there's not...
Also bear in mind that between Nick and I and the rest of the crew, we have done pretty well in our picks so far. My only loss, I believe, is Ben Askren and Jorge Masvidal, which I even said I kind of like. By the end of that last podcast, I was kind of...
I had you all
convinced.
Yeah. I had you all going. It was there, man.
The voodoo was there.
Sometimes I just have the feeling.
He was definitely right
I think
about that
we
one.
all, except for Brock, picked Luke Rockhold, and then Blachowicz cracked his ass.
Him.
Yeah.
Nice.
I've made a couple of out there picks to more as devil advocates picks, but yeah.
Yeah.
Like Holly, I picked, and I didn't really.
Well, I
but
respect that. Yeah.
I had to put it out there.
Anything you lost with the Holly Holm fight? Obviously, the Masvidal fight was before that.
Yeah.
But you definitely got way more praise than you did losing.
All right, guys. So now that wraps up the card mostly.
I had one more question about Max and Frankie after we get through the what do you think? Now I don't see it going to the ground, but what do you think? Do you think it's a different fight if Frankie's on top?
Not necessarily.
I think Frankie might, if he can take Max down, Max gets right back up.
Yeah.
Because
I don't see Frankie be able to hold Max down
as far as
for an extended amount of time to really do any real damage.
Yeah, if he starts committing to some ground and pound, I think Holly's right back up.
I don't disagree. As far as grappling credentials go, Max is a purple belt under Pedro Sauer, and Frankie is a black belt under Ricardo Almeida, and also an NCAA. Was he Division 1? Division 2?
I would assume so. But I don't know.
I forget if it was Division 1 or Division 2 wrestler.
I think it might have been.
I'm not saying that is the end-all, be-all on the ground, because, purple belts can do lots of crazy things.
Once again, Max is lanky, and those guys are hard to hold down.
It's all about style. It really is.
Yeah, it's a styles make fights, and this fight does not favor Frankie, in my opinion.
Division 1?
So if we had to give an ultimate prediction, I think Max Holloway is going to win pretty dominantly, but I think Edgar's going to stay in there for 5 rounds. I think Holloway takes a lopsided 5-round decision.
I see a 3rd-round TKO.
I could see that as well.
I lean towards Nick with a good fight, but a pretty strong decision.
I just kind of envision we're going to see one of those fights where he makes to the end, but Frankie's face is falling off, that type of thing. We've seen that a couple times with him. Mm-hmm. So, that's what I want to see. Brock, what do you got?
I agree. I feel like he's not going to be able to hold him down if he gets him down. If Ortega couldn't hold him down, I feel like he's not going to be able to hold him down.
Ortega's not the wrestler that
he's no wrestler.
Anyone is, really.
He's no wrestler, but when he's on top of you, you shouldn't be able to get back up.
Yeah, but I don't think he ever really established much control, which is to Max's credit.
Right, yeah.
Exactly.
I feel like that was definitely all Max is doing.
If anybody listens to this and it takes my picks for credibility, I think back to when I picked Shevchenko by decision, and we saw how that fight ended with a baseball bat to Jessica Ai's head.
One of the most savage knockouts we've maybe seen this whole year.
Definitely on the women's side.
That might be the hardest knockout we've seen all year, just about.
Except for Masvidal.
It's a strong number 2, guys.
It's a strong number 2.
As far as women's, that's definitely up there.
It's definitely the hardest.
The only other vicious knockout, obviously, we think of Ronda, but I think that beats Ronda. And Jessica Andrade when she knocked out Carolina. Remember that? The left
we also
hook.
forgot
what
about
Rose?
The Rose
the
slam.
Rose slam. That
What's
was
worse,
scary.
the Rose slam or the Sinchenko head kick?
Head kick, honestly.
Yeah,
I'd
rather get slammed.
I like the slam. My bad. I like the slam a lot, but I
mean, Jessica Ai was.
I'd rather be on the receiving end of the slam
versus
a head kick.
Yeah.
At least I feel like I would.
She was unconscious for a while.
Neither are great because, I mean, Rose was out for a little bit, at least out of it, and on your neck like that, that's never great. That can permanently damage everything, but shins and domes are not meant to interact, so there's...
But in other news, our boy Johnny Bones Jones in the news again
boy.
And I will say, allegedly...
The sound of it, please.
Allegedly assaulting a lady of the pole in Albuquerque
a cocktail waitress,
named Cinnamon.
Yeah, she wasn't even a stripper. She was a cocktail waitress there.
Okay.
Is the name Cinnamon confirmed, or are we going off of what Shab was saying? Because that's where I heard Cinnamon.
Okay, so that could be fake news.
It could be a joke.
I will do the digging on that. I'm gonna go to Brendan Schaub's Twitter.
What's interesting about this situation to me is how candid John Jones is being about his innocence and about there's security footage proof that exonerates him.
And we know how John acts when he's guilty.
Right.
He cries.
He runs away.
He gives you all of this, I'm a good guy, yada yada yada, excuses.
God's testing me.
All of that.
Right.
That's how John acts when he's guilty.
innocent.
When he's innocent, we don't know that he's innocent.
We don't know if he's guilty.
We don't know that he's guilty. This time, he's like, I don't care about this. This is nothing. Don't worry about it. It's a very different reaction to when he has actually done something wrong.
I mean, he's acting basically as business as usual. Like, this is just going to roll off his back. Yeah. So, I mean, that kind of confidence gives...
Okay, but...
makes me kind of think that maybe he's telling the truth, because usually guilty people are trying to avoid...
He also did bulldoze a pregnant lady, so
yeah,
you gotta keep that
in mind. I just had this thought, though, when you said it's business as usual. John gets away with it every time, so maybe he just doesn't give a fuck this time. It is business as usual, and it doesn't matter what he did.
Winners get away with shit.
I mean,
it's the sad truth of the world we live in.
He has a bunch of so-called witnesses there to say he did stuff. Look how good
Kobe Bryant was playing when he had that alleged rape charge against him. He was dropping dimes out there, playing for his freedom. Mm-hmm. Telling you.
Well, I feel like why else would he ask for security footage? Not just say, "Oh, that's a ridiculous statement." Okay, you can pull up the security footage. There were cameras in there. And now everybody's like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah, I would love to see security footage. And I am reserving my judgment, and I just keep going back and forth. Like, well, it could be this, or it could be that.
Now, yeah, I mean, John could also.
I can see John doing that shit.
He could also be a target.
Exactly. I was going to say. Now, could it also be a girl who came on to him? He wasn't feeling it, and now it's
he's got a screwed up past.
Right.
He's rich.
We've all been to the strip club when the ugly stripper comes and tries to get you to buy a dance.
That hasn't happened to me before. No.
I'm sorry, Nick.
Nick would never do that. He's a charitable young man.
I would agree.
I'm reading the article that Brennan Schaub replied to with the whole thing about calling her cinnamon. I have not seen a single thing about this woman's name
on his podcast. That's like a common stripper name.
I think he was just joking on the podcast.
Yeah. Right. He was just making.
I would have liked it if her name was cinnamon.
I mean,
so we also have the California Kid supposedly going to get a title shot. It looks like after not being in the octagon for how many years?
Just 2.
2 years?
Just about 2. Just 2.
2-year hiatus?
Costing me a little bit of my payroll when I bet on Ricky Simone. I'm a little mad at him for that, but I'm happy for him for coming back strong.
He looked good. As good as you can. Sometimes the rest and all of that is what you need. Faber is always training at Alpha Male. He was out of the ring, but not out of competition. He did how many different grappling competitions?
At least one that I know of.
I know he did Quintet.
He did do Quintet, so that's 2.
So
okay, yes.
I'm trying to remember the one you're thinking of because I know
Polaris against Nikki Ryan.
Yes, he did roll. He went with Nikki Ryan,
which was one of the most aggravating matches I've ever seen. Honestly,
why is that?
I have a thing. I kind of don't like it when somebody goes against a jiu-jitsu world champion off of their merits in MMA success. Because, yes, Uriah Faber has had a lot of submission wins in MMA competition, but that means absolutely nothing when you step into a jiu-jitsu match with a jiu-jitsu world champion. And it looked like he didn't belong in there. Is
Nikki a world champion at this point? He's 17-year-old.
Polaris champion. He's won EPI before.
Okay. Also, Faber and Nikki are friends.
Yeah.
Or acquaintances. This is one of those roles where Uncle Uriah is going and having a match with Nikki because Nikki's the new kid,
Yeah. But I just don't think it's a watchable product. I know it pulls some casual viewers because of Uriah Faber's name, but just like the same thing with Craig Jones facing Anthony Johnson.
That was a travesty to me because Rumble was not a grappler.
Yeah.
And who would Uriah Faber be jumping over potentially if given this title shot?
Aljamain Sterling.
Peter Yan.
And Peter Yan.
This is where I know we've seen this multiple times.
I would watch a Uriah Faber versus Aljamain.
So that leads me to what I wanted to say. Because Dana White is saying that Cejudo will be defending 125 next. Mm-hmm. It goddamn better be against Joseph Benavidez.
Yeah, it will be.
Joe B or we riot,
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned.
So that gives time to establish a solid contender for the Bantamweight Championship.
It does, or
And then, I mean, this might not even happen.
it
you know
maybe
what I mean? It's just
leads
rumors
to
right now.
the Uriah Aljo fight,
Right.
which I would favor Aljo heavily.
Yeah.
Favor Aljo. But
Other rumors that we have is Damian Maia potentially fighting Ben Askren after Ben's savage knockout. God.
So,
I feel like that's a knockout that you got to reevaluate your life.
yeah, and honestly, I mean, I wish he was taking more time off because I know we're months away from this fight happening if it gets scheduled. But
What, December maybe?
yeah.
September they're talking about.
That's what I heard
I
was
think
September.
even if it was December, I think that's too soon.
I agree.
When someone gets knocked out like that, and especially when he takes follow-up shots when he's out cold, he took 2 solid shots after that flying
And
knee.
did not know what happened.
Yeah. I feel like you should take a lot of time off when you get your clock cleaned like that. It's
I mean, it was thoroughly cleaned.
it's serious business.
It was cleaned by a dude from Switzerland with those thick glasses and a magnifying glass.
It was cleaned by the Lord.
It was. Whew.
Yeah, for me, that's like a minimum 6 month to 8 month.
which
no
I think
activity.
His
Yeah.
medical suspension is up in September. They might try to schedule the fight right after that.
That's what I've been hearing.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, granted, Damian Maia is a good fight for him to come back on. Maybe
Damian Maia's got hands.
he's
Damian
some
Maia's
hands.
got knockouts
So,
on his record.
That's my question here because I've seen him clock some people. on the feet.
I'm not calling
So-
for it.
We have obviously 2 strong grappling based guys. People talk about this question all the time. And you have 2 guys that are good at the same thing. Does it neutralize out and you see the opposite skill?
Happens sometimes.
Are we going to see
A bad
because-
kickboxing fight.
Are we going to see a bad kickboxing fight because we're seeing 2 grapplers? They might cancel each other out.
I don't think so, just
Because
because.
Ben doesn't kickbox.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ben will not stop going for the takedown.
Yeah.
I always reference Ben Askren versus Marcelo Garcia in
Oh,
this
God.
case. And although, Maia's style necessarily isn't the exact same,
You know who Maia's best friend in Jiu-Jitsu is, though?
I
Is it-
feel like
is it
It's
Marcelo?
Marcelo. That's his training partner and brother.
I feel like it's just not. Dana's trying to kill him. He's trying to kill him.
Oh, yeah,
That
Dana.
could be what's happening.
Dana's streak of vengeance against Ben Askren.
You brought him in and you traded him for
is playing
your best fighter. And
the
So-
ultimate
And you fed him to the
slow
wolves.
con.
Honestly,
oh yeah,
Robbie Lawler, Jorge Masvidal.
you almost
my
killed him
long
the first time.
That's
you
the
murdered him the
long
second
con.
time.
Well,
and now you're
that
trying
is
to
the
cut the blood flow off to his
longest
brain.
con.
You're gonna feed him to the anaconda that is Damian Maia.
Oh.
You know, Damian right now is like.
That's just ignorant. At
Damian
this point.
is sitting in Brazil right now, saying to himself, "I'm gonna strangle this fucking guy."
Damien is. I hope Damien is in New York with Marcelo and they're just doing jiu-jitsu forever.
in that steamy ass little gym they got.
I do this, you do this. I do this, you do this. Forever.
Yes. I've been waiting for that to come up in class.
And last but not least, we should definitely touch on this.
Oh, yeah,
Unfortunately, there's a really dark spot in the world of combat sports this past week with the death of Russian boxer Maxim Dadashev. He actually died here in Maryland, where we live.
28 years old.
Yep. Father and husband was boxing down at the MGM National Harbor, down towards the D.C. area. And it's really sad. It's rare that you have a death in combat sports. It happens occasionally. It very rarely happens in MMA. I cannot think of the last death in MMA. I think there was one in England a
I
couple
think
years
there's
ago.
one in EFC Africa. That's the last I've heard. of
Yeah,
martial
last
arts.
year there was a death.
You hear a death in boxing, though, about every 3 or 4 years
Yeah.
it'll happen. But interestingly, and nobody in the media has seemed to mention this, I'm really interested if potentially if Rogan brings this up in his next MMA style podcast, or next time he has somebody on there that is involved in, or interested at least in combat sports, is you don't see deaths at the heavyweight and the higher weight divisions. They only happen at the lower divisions.
They've really-
And I think it really has something to do, and Rogan, I agree with Rogan on this, and that has something to do with weight cut.
Yeah.
Because when you cut weight, you not only cut the water out of your body, you're cutting the water out of your brain. and the water that your brain sits in and the protection that it gives you. And then you get into a boxing match and you're taking 300 punches to the head over the course of 12 rounds or so. You know, Maxim Dadashev had Buddy McGritt in his corner, who is an excellent trainer, and there's a really sad video of Buddy, you know, at the end of the fight telling his fighter that he's going to throw the towel, that he, you know, shouldn't be in there. And unfortunately, you know, Maxim still ended up dying later. But I don't think that's Buddy's fault. And if you are a professional fighter, even an amateur fighter, you're thinking about getting into the fight game and you're taking a run at it, make sure that you have yourself a coach like Buddy, somebody who is going to protect you from yourself.
Errol Helwani made a really good point, and I think everybody needs to listen to this, is this just bleed culture in specifically mixed martial arts, but in all combat sports. We as fans need to stop telling fighters when they should quit. And, you know, whenever somebody wants to stop fighting, that has to be accepted, because we have to realize how dangerous this sport can be.
When Raquel Pennington's corner said, no, get back in there, when she said, I quit, on the stool between the second and the third round. I don't care who you are. I quit just came out of that fighter's mouth on the stool. The fight's over. Yeah. And with this Dadashev thing, this is a 140-pound world title fight. So he was cutting weight to make this fight.
Absolutely.
Oh, Dadashev, I would imagine, if he's fighting at 140, probably walks around at least 165.
Probably. Maybe boxing isn't as known for as big of weight cuts, but it's still known for weight cuts. And what I wanted to get into is not just the weight cuts, but also Dadashev was set to make $75,000 for this fight.
Yeah.
Minus training expenses. Mm-hmm. And taxes and whatever else, is $75,000 worth your life.
He's going to clear $35,000.
Yeah. Maybe. You know?
After everything's said and done.
And, you know, they talk about all the time, they compare boxing salaries to MMA salaries, and they bring up the biggest stars of boxing, comparing them to
Sure,
the
but
UFC.
Those are 6 guys, maybe.
Yeah, 6 guys. You think about the journeyman of look at any big boxing card you could think of. The first one that comes to mind for me, because I'm an MMA fan, is Floyd versus Conor. Go look at the payouts on that card.
Even the co-main.
Yeah.
They don't made pennies.
Unless you're a pay-per-view draw, you're making peanuts, and it's the same thing as MMA. You're not making the big piece of the pie.
Look at it this way. Yeah. Paulie Malignaggi was a how many time world champion, and has a career in commentary, and still took the money to fight Artem.
And it wasn't even that much.
Yeah. It was supposed to be a big ass check, and I don't think it had 6 figures.
Yeah, I think broke both of his hands. Right?
Which apparently, if you go like this to his hands, you just flick his hands.
Basically. But still,
Floyd too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But
and if anything, like, that fight tarnished Paulie's legacy for sure.
Oh, but that's not the point I'm making right now. I don't care about that. The point I'm making is the UFC clears millions. They're trying to pay back a multi-billion-dollar sale. But they just got the new Fox deal, or not the new Fox deal, the new ESPN deal, with all the things that come with that, and all the money they made there, and just one thing after another has come. Reebok, USADA, Fox. Before it was Fox, it was Spike.
Yeah.
And now ESPN, and the fighters have gotten nothing out of this.
Yeah.
The company
got sold for $4 billion.
And they're still claiming that the fighters are independent contractors, but the fighters don't have options.
Any choice of what they can wear.
No independent contractor is required to wear anything other than safety gear.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, actually. I'll make a quick point, because that is the God-honest truth, is that they are not independent contractors, whether they try to make it seem like it or not, because every time a fighter tries to exercise their right to be an independent contractor, an example besides the one we already brought up was Yair Rodriguez last year didn't want to take a fight against Zabit. Remember that fight? Dana cut him because he didn't take the fight.
Yep.
So now, you know, when it's convenient for Dana, you're an employee. But every other time, they bill it as an independent contract.
Every fighter
It's
calls
just a
Dana their
loophole.
boss.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
It's slimy stuff. And
It's just dirty business practice.
Yeah.
And Dana is a character that belongs more in the mobbed up history of Las Vegas.
Right.
And boxing and fighting, and not in the sport that we want to evolve from it.
Before we wrap this up, I want to, we'll get back to the boxing death. With the sport of boxing, I feel like it has less of a stigma than MMA does because MMA looks more brutal because people are hitting each other with elbows. There's a lot more blood, stuff like that. But I honestly do feel that boxing is a more dangerous sport to get into.
It's been proven.
Yeah.
There's been studies
You
done.
think about it. I mean, just think of the logic of a situation. Let's say you get rocked in an MMA fight. You get rocked in a boxing fight. You fall down in both of those. MMA fight, you fall down, the guy's going to follow you down, probably hit you 2 or 3 more solid times. It's over.
If that.
Yeah. Boxing match, you fall down, you're given 10 seconds to get back up.
And then you get to get punched in the head more.
Yeah.
For rounds.
Exponentially more. So maybe you could survive a whole 12-round fight after you just got concussed, where your brain's vulnerable.
in the first round.
Yeah. So
Like Thurman just did in the Pacquiao fight.
that's really the biggest thing to take here is I need people to realize you got to live to fight another day. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
This definitely woke up a lot of people because we got to stop with this. Reffing is soft, reffing is this, because
No, I mean, and we just had a Herb Dean stoppage recently that was early. And yeah, it was early, but
Early over late every
early over
single
late
time.
every time. Yeah, at the end of the day, this should remind us all that. And, I agree with you that this just bleed culture needs to go away. And we need to appreciate the technical art of what we're watching.
Going back to what you're saying with heavyweights, I definitely do agree that the weight cut is a huge factor in that. But also, if you look at the volume of strikes between a match at 152 pounds and a heavyweight match, it's probably double.
It could almost be even triple.
Yeah.
I'm sure that
what's the weight cap at boxing heavyweights? The same as MMA 265, or they do like the different
Boxing
don't
weight
see
classes
really-
are completely
those
different.
guys aren't
You
that
don't
big.
see
though.
any
They're
guys
normally
that
like
big
220.
things. Right.
I think, for example, Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua and all those guys are in their 230 range.
230, 240, yeah.
At the most,
Wilder
at the biggest.
came in against Fury at 209?
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Something like
Tyson
that.
was like 219 back in the day.
Yeah.
They're not bigger than 230 usually.
So cruiserweight is supposedly at 200 pounds, and then heavyweight is above that.
Gotcha.
So I'm just looking at
So yeah, guys probably because you
over 200 pounds looks like
speed
heavyweight.
and power. You know what I mean? You have to have a healthy balance between that. But yes, a moment of silence for Maxim. It's super sad. And we hope that we don't see anything like that happen again in the future. And
A warrior going out on his shield is honorable, but it's not worth $75,000 that your family won't see half of.
Even
It's-
if it was millions,
It's not worth millions. It's
And,
outdated, and it's time to move on to
people need to be fighting at their own weight at the end of the day. That's all.
Weight
I mean,
cutting.
We want to see good fights. We don't really care about divisions.
And this
isn't nobody really cares who the 155-pound champ is. All Max Holloway's Max Holloway's a champ at this weight. This guy's a champ at this. It's whatever. We just want to see good fights. So for that is the Mattime Podcast for Nick, Brock, and Brad, and myself, Zach. Really appreciate you listeners. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you on the mat.